race fans, my name is Taylor and welcome to Above the Yellow Line, the show where we talk about all the updates, theories, news, recaps, and more of the NASCAR Cup Series. As I said in last podcast, this is all about recapping the O'Reilly Auto Parts 253 at the Daytona Road Course, and oh my goodness, this is going to be a recap. Last podcast was a glimpse at how the Xfinity and Trucks teams fared on this track and also discussed some Cup driver details on the new sponsorship deals that came into this race and what will be in future races, so make sure you check that out. I also want to mention the importance of this date. The race Sunday, at least, marked the 73rd year of NASCAR, so happy birthday to NASCAR. Now, I don't know if this is the present that NASCAR needed, this race, and we'll talk about it, but I know what felt like a really good gift and a present has been these pre-race shows, which are, again, fantastic. Last weekend's was fantastic. This weekend's was fantastic. I feel like we're being spoiled with this, honestly. The Fox broadcasters are top-notch, and I'm just not talking about Clint Boyer and Jeff Gordon and Mike Joy. I'm talking about the whole team, like Larry Mack, and all of them are doing such a good job. I'm falling in love with the segment called Pull It Out, where they showed like race clips that should have caution flags, but either don't or they're being pulled out. It's a great and fun segment to start the race off with. There's also great segments with the pre-race show. They also did a skit with Jeff Gordon and Clint Boyer that was freaking hilarious, of them racing around the track in normal cars, and it was super great. And if you didn't see it, I highly recommend looking it up on YouTube. It spanned over the course of, I think, 3 commercial breaks, and Mike Joy even played along, and God bless Mike Joy for playing along because it was so incredibly funny. And the Boyer-Gordon relationship is just so fun to watch, and I know they're playing off of it like they're enemies and whatever, but it's working. It's really entertaining, and Boyer in the booth, I'll say it once, I'll say it 1,000 times, and I'll say it again, is a win for the sport. From the pre-race show to the end of the broadcast, it has been a blast listening to Clint Boyer in the booth, and I'm excited to continue to listen to him throughout the season. Now, as always, before we dive into the race itself, let's talk about the track history and the race details. This race is 70 laps around the track and is 253 miles long. Every lap made is 3.61 miles, and every lap has 14 twists and turns to get around. Stage 1 is 16 laps, Stage 2 is 18 laps, and the final stage is 36 laps. For more information on the track layout and the track changes, be sure to check out my podcast number 7, where we talk about the road course in detail and all those turns and how you should get around them. This is the second time the Cup Series has raced in this configuration, and the first winner at this track was Chase Elliott, who led the field to green this weekend. Here's how the rest of the field lined up right beside him and behind him. Mentioning cars to the rear of the field are Justin Haley, Garrett Smithley, and Eric Jones to the rear of the field for either unapproved changes or something of the sort. A few cars I want to mention here as well is Newman in his number 6 Castrol white paint scheme starting in 33rd that I talked about in my last podcast, and Corey LaJoie starting in 7th, and yes, 7th, which is very impressive, in his The Crew paint scheme. If you want me to talk about the TV show The Crew, it's on Netflix. It's about NASCAR with Kevin James. Let me know in the comments below, and I binged it all in one day, so I can do a little talk about it. I don't know. But just let me know. Mixed reviews. With the paint scheme, let's bring it back. Let's stay on topic here and look at our top 10 again. I don't know if you're thinking what I'm thinking, but I thought this was a really weird top 10. I know the equation NASCAR has brings in the events from last race and puts them in this position because COVID. They couldn't have qualifying for this race. So this is a very mixed bag we're seeing for the top 10. And like I said, COVID made the lineup so we can't have qualifying or practice, so it cannot determine the field. And we always see that after the 500 race. We saw it last year, so the lineup made sense. This year, it just does not. And so it's interesting. And oh boy, was this race interesting. We saw our heroes fall and underdogs conquer. So let's start this race and break down stage 1. With the wave of the green flag, Chase Elliott bolted out to the front of the field. We had no surprises there. That was expected with him starting in position number 1. And then McDowell and Kyle Busch had early trouble. We get our first caution at the top of the race in lap 2 when McDowell's tire that unraveled was laying out on the track. I was hoping that McDowell would start off this race strong after his 500 win and after gaining a new primary sponsor post-win, but he missed turn 1 and Kyle Busch got into the 14 of Briscoe and got damage to the right front of his car. Briscoe had some damage as well. So under this caution, Kyle Busch and McDowell head to the pits to fix damage to their cars, and then we're back to green on lap 4. Yet again, Chase Elliott jumps to the front of the field and dominates the race with a 4.5 second lead for most of the rest of the stage. And at this point, this is where Quinn Half goes to the garage with damage, and we start to see lots of cars spin. The theme of this night for a few drivers, and many drivers actually, not just a few, were mistakes, tire damage, and spins. In the first stage alone, we had many spins. Briscoe, McDowell, and Keselowski who, Keselowski, I'm going to call him Spinny McGee for this race tonight, he spent most of the time more in the grass than on the track, and that's an absolute joke. Like, I don't mean that, but honestly, it felt like it with the amount of times we saw him spinning out. In the first stage alone, we also had lots of tire issues. Roughly 4 drivers lost tires in stage 1. I already mentioned Kyle Busch and Michael McDowell. We also had Jones on lap 11 and Matt DiBenedetto with 5 to go in the stage lose a tire that brought out another caution. With this caution, pretty much everyone came to pit road. Byron and Reddick were sent to the rear of the field for uncontrolled tires, and I believe the only car to stay out was Bell, making him your new leader, beginning an impressive run for him tonight. With 3 to go, the green flag waved, and no surprise, Chase Elliott went to the front of the field and took the stage. So Chase Elliott is your stage 1 winner. Here is your top 10 for the stage. We have Elliott, Logano, Hamlin, Keselowski, Kurt Busch, Larson, Truex, Bell, Harvick, and Chris Buescher. Round out your stage 1 top 10. So with that, we're going to move on to stage 2, where Elliott and Logano line up the field to green. At this point, I really wasn't sure if there was just one race going on or two, because it was literally a race with Elliott versus maybe a ghost, I don't know, and then the whole field trying to fight it out for themselves who got the second spot, which to them was probably first at this point. At this point also, there was not much word on Truex and Allmendinger, who were slowly working their way through the field. They were also the big dogs that were trying to give Chase a run for his money tonight, and they started to create their way back in by lap 21 when they had made their way into the top 10. Just as those two were making their way towards the leader, a caution came out for Ross Chastain on lap 27 after contact with Ryan Blaney sent him into the wall on the exit of turn 6 with a heavy hit, lots of damage to the car, and this damage did end his night. With this caution, the pit stops that ensued after this, I was starting to remember an issue from last season regarding Chase Elliott's pit crew, and it's that they tend to goof. And Elliott is, he's driving, he's doing everything he can, and there's 2 teams here. There's the driver and the pit crew, and you have to work together, but the driver is in charge of himself and what he can do. The pit crew is in charge of getting the driver out in the front, back from pit stops, doing a good job. And Chase Elliott's pit crew, they lost him 5 spots on this caution, I think kind of costing him a little bit of the race here. Another driver who had a rough pit stop was Chase Briscoe, who had to go to the rear for an uncontrolled tire. So after these stops with 4 to go, they went back to green with Allmendinger leading for a short time before Hamlin took the lead, finishing out with 4 to go in the stage, winning stage 2. Here is the top 10 of stage 2 on your screen here. Wallace was bound to be in the top 10, but then was forced to go to the pits with left front damage and a tire rub. Other drivers to mention here are Kurt Busch, who finished second in this stage. We'll talk about him more in the final stage, but he drove this car so well for most of the night. I was very impressed with Kurt Busch at this point as well. And how can we not mention Truex and Elliott finishing this stage next to each other? Those two raced against each other, and that's what I wanted to see tonight. That's why I was so tuned into this race. I wanted to see Truex and Elliott battle. I wanted to see Truex redeem himself, but unfortunately, this race right here at the end of the stage was as far as we got. With the conclusion of stage 2, we have pit stops. Notable pit stops were for Allmendinger, who had to go to the rear for being too fast on pit road, which was a shame because, yet again, he was working his way back up to the field. He was doing super well, and he is trying to contend with Chase Elliott here to beat his road course streak. Also notable that a few cars opted to stay on the track. 2 cars that stayed on the track were Suarez and DiBenedetto, leading the field in the final stage on lap 36. This field was quickly taken over by Kurt Busch, who, I'll just show it here. Holy cow, he drove straight through the course from 1st to 27th after getting into a curb and losing the car in turn 4. Now this was the time the yelling at my TV began because I felt so bad for Kurt Busch. He ran an almost perfect race up to this point, and that lead just slipping from his fingers made me so sad. He came back. Don't worry, he came back. But this, I think, cost him the lead, and oh my goodness, I felt so bad for him. This incident, however, had Christopher Bell take the lead for a few laps until, of course, the road course king, Chase Elliott, retook the lead. And with this part of the race, there was a lot more pushing and shoving and spinning and penalties, and I have to mention real quick, at this point in the race, I was very impressed with the Joe Gibbs Racing drivers. Christopher Bell was in position 2, Truex was in position 3, Kyle Busch in 4, and Hamlin in 6. And this to me is very promising to see from the Joe Gibbs Racing camp. Last year they struggled a little bit as a whole, as a team, and to see them, I know it's race 2 and it is a road course, but being at a road course and being in the front as a team was very impressive. So I'm excited to hopefully see them all stay in the front and regain the momentum that they seemed to lose last year. And with Christopher Bell, he was in P2, but he was not letting Elliott get away this time. And he was the only driver in this entire race, shockingly, to track down the 9 and keep him in arm's length. And it seemed like no one else came to play today, or they fell flat on their face trying to catch up with the 9. But Bell was right there. And as Christopher Bell kept inching his way into the clutch of Chase Elliott, we started green flag pit stops around 20-ish to go. And then here is the call that changed the whole entire race. And I'm going to get into this and I'm going to gripe about it. Daytona looked gorgeous. It was a beautiful scene. It was a beautiful sky and a rainbow. And we know what rainbows mean. Rainbows mean rain. And there was a very light drizzle on the track that sent pit crews scrambling to get their drivers rain tires if they needed them. With the lightest of rain continuing, NASCAR decided to pull the caution flag out for rain and brought the field to pit lane to either put rain tires on or opt out. Here is my issue with that. So from what I saw, and obviously I'm not there, so I can't be a perfect judge of this, the track did not look nearly wet enough to throw a caution, and I believe there was only one part of the track that started to discolor, but the rest was clear. According to Denny, Hamlin, at least what I saw on social media in a post-race interview, he said when the caution was pulled, parts of the track were damp. But why would you put rain tires on if only parts of the track were slightly damp? You're going to have rain tires on even in the light parts of the track, and that's going to mess up your racing. There's not enough rain to discolor the whole track, so why would you do it? And so in my humble opinion, this was NASCAR's way to intervene with the race, if you will, and let me tell you, this changed everything. This caution sent the field to pit road just to get new tires. No team, I actually think no team put on rain tires because it was just drizzle, and just as they got onto pit road, the rain stopped. So pretty much NASCAR took this race away from drivers that were in the front of the field the whole day, the drivers that had success the whole day. And this just isn't for Chase Elliott. I know I'm a fan of Chase. I'm guilty, but this was also a Truex race that he could have won. This was an Allmendinger race that he could have won. And other drivers' races that just ended with this horrible call. So with that questionable caution done, I would like to say karma ensued. There was a lot of chaos because 11 cars stayed on the track and this race was dwindling down fast. Logano led the field to green, where the leader of this whole entire race, Chase Elliott, tragically spun out and dropped all the way back to 14th. At the same time, though, Reddick ran off the track, ran into one of the signs, and his car went up in flames, which is fire, I guess. But this, like I said, could have been the move, unfortunately for Reddick, that saved Chase Elliott's race. He needed some luck, and he got lucky. I don't know how he saved that car. Take a look at this. I don't understand. It takes a lot of talent to save the car that goes in the grass, and he missed that sign there, too. And he only ended up with just grass covering the nose that he ended up getting off. It was an impressive save, but it wasn't enough because with 10 to go, Truex ended up collecting a lot of cars into a mini crash. He spun out after he tried to get around Brad Keselowski, and Chase Elliott, who was in this, got nose damage after a run-in with LaJoie in the mix of this. So the caution flag was pulled out. And then with 8 to go, surprisingly, the race ran green until the end with several spinouts and mini wrecks. Logano led the field to the green and had many challengers with Bell right behind him. Larson tried to challenge for the lead but dove his car into the tire barrier while trying to do a little cross remover. Larson could have won the race with this. It could have been the race winning pass, but he drove it in too hard and he wrecked his car, and this was almost the icing on the cake for the horrible night that Team Hendrick had. One of their teammates did finish in the top 10, but holy cow, it was horrible. And from this point on, I kid you not, I think there was incidents on every single lap until the end. Let's go through the horrible NASCAR's 12 Days of Christmas with 7 to go. So in between this time of Christopher Bell and Logano racing for the race lead, we'll get to that in 7 laps here, but in between this time, Kyle Busch went into the wall with 7 to go. With 6 to go, our hero of the day, Chase Elliott, had a spin after contact with Hamlin. I'm showing you right here, ending his hopes for a good finish after a dominant race. He got into Keselowski a little bit there, so that was with 6 to go. With 5 to go, Chase Briscoe's hood flew up and blocked his windshield, and then he got black flagged with 4 to go, and with 4 to go as well, Austin Dillon had a tire go down and went to the pits. Same with Kyle Busch. With 3 to go, Bubba misses turn 1, ending his hopes at a pretty good finish. With 2 to go, Byron gets a flat tire and heads to the pits with 1 to go, and on the final lap, after the worst NASCAR 12 Days of Christmas spoof, Take a look at this. Christopher Bell races his way to the lead. I thought he was going to slip when he got into the chicane, exiting the chicane there. I was a little nervous, but nope, 2 to go. Christopher Bell races his way in front of Joey Logano, and then to the checkered flag, winning his first NASCAR Cup Series race at the O'Reilly Auto Parts 253 at the Daytona Road Course. An impressive run from him today, and I have mixed feelings about Christopher Bell. We'll get to that in a few seconds, but this was a well-deserved win. He did so well. Bell joins a really cool list with Michael McDowell. This is the first time since 1949 and 1950, the first 2 years of NASCAR, literally the first 2 years of NASCAR, that 2 first-time drivers won the first races of the season back-to-back. That is a pretty cool stat and a pretty cool list to be a part of because it has not happened, like I said, since the sport began. And if you remember me talking about the Xfinity race in the last podcast, Joe Gibbs watched his grandson win his first race yesterday, making a lot of firsts, or at least Saturday, as I mean by yesterday if you're listening to this at a different time. And now he watched his new driver in the 20 win his first race, so it was a big weekend for the Joe Gibbs camp, so congrats to that whole team. This was a big weekend for a lot of teams, and this race was also a bad weekend for a lot of teams. It was a busy and complex race. Let's look at the results here, and you can tell. Elliott finished 21st after leading over half this race, and Truex finished 12th. 2 big contenders for this race not finishing well. Ryan Blaney, who I thought was going to do really well in this race, was pretty much a ghost and finished 15th. He had issue after issue, and he just did not run well, so I was really disappointed there. Kurt Busch had an exciting and well-deserved 4th place finish with a no-quit attitude after he glided off the track. So great job for Kurt Busch. Let's also mention Kevin Harvick, who had a not-so-great day. He finished 6th after the whole debacle with everyone kind of wrecking out and the whole rain delay thing. AJ Allmendinger, who was back in a Cup car for his first race back, finished 7th, above his competition of Elliott and Truex Jr. Also overcoming adversity this weekend was Michael McDowell, who finished 8th after a really rough start to the race. And sitting quietly in the final lineup is Keselowski finishing 5th, and Preece and Bowman, who weren't talked about during the race pretty much at all, finishing 9th and 10th. And Preece starting off the season with 2 top 10 finishes. Very impressive. Now I'm going to break some news to you all that you might realize or might not, but do you realize that when Bell won this race, he's automatically locking himself into the playoff round of 16? Look at these points here. So we also have McDowell in this playoff round of 16. So first 2-time winners in this year's playoff is going to mix things up. That is 2 out of 16 spots gone for other teams. So there's going to be a lot of competition now early in the race that we have 2 people locked in. I hope Bell and McDowell can really show that they deserve those spots and that they can be real competitors in these playoffs, because I saw a lot of cautious anger on social media about this. So prove us wrong, Christopher and McDowell. Please prove us wrong. I know a lot of people give Bell a lot of crap. He had a horrible race last weekend, wrecking out about half of the field, and goes to win this week. I do not have a lot to go off of here. It's 50-50, but every time I get optimistic for him, something goes wrong. But with his background of dirt racing and having success in these road courses, oh man, he is one to watch out for this season. He's going to contend for a lot of wins. To finish this recap, let's go over some of my gripes about this setup at the Daytona track and in general for this race, and let's also rate the race. So here are my 3 gripes that I mentioned during the Daytona race, the Daytona 500. The grass needs to be fixed. It has ruined too many drivers' days, and I have no clue why this year's grass seems to be an issue over the other years, but something that the track can do or to keep in mind for the future is that the grass should probably be kept to a minimum, or maybe we need concrete on the track, or not like on the track, but in the infield areas. Number 2, local cautions. Now, with this race was better with the cautions than the Truck Series, which caution after caution that lasted forever. But if we kept the cautions local to sections of the track, the field could continue to race in a diverted part of the tracks, keeping the race at a decent time and keeping the action moving. So I hope NASCAR looks into this, because we have 7 road courses, and oh my goodness, this was exhausting. An exhausting weekend to sit through all these cautions, so maybe look into local cautions. Finally, with local yellows and local cautions, know when to throw the caution. There was an issue all weekend with all the series. When do you throw the caution and when do you not? Tonight, at least with the rain, let the drivers and the teams make the decisions to come to pit road and put the tires on, instead of having NASCAR control the race and control the fate of these teams. So let the teams decide on these road course races when they come to pit and put on the rain tires if they need them. So those are my 3 gripes. Let me know if you had the same gripes as I did, the same issues. So The issues seem to overshadow the positives of this race a bit. Even though there was exciting races out there, I still think the call by NASCAR disrupted the race in an unfair way. I do think this race was significantly better than the 500, and I know I give the 500 a rating of 65, but let's be honest, it deserved a 40. I was just too generous because it's the Daytona 500, and I don't feel like I should get an F grade. So this race I'm going to go with a 60%, and it's a wavering 60%. It is above the yellow line, so I'm okay with that. I think the ending of this race saved the race for me, seeing Christopher Bell win his first race in a deserving fashion. There was great racing, but too many variables that just made it chaotic and frustrating to watch. This weekend is starting to have me thinking that 7 road courses is way too much, and oh, speaking of way too much, holy cow, we are done with this with this race recap. Road course recaps are insane because you have to think of, like, there's 2 things happening at once. There's something happening in turns 9 and 10, and you have something also happening at the same time in turns 5 and 6. And so thank you so much for sticking with me in this episode of Above the Yellow Line. Next week we will hopefully be tamer as we go to Homestead, Miami in a normal 4-turn track and take a break from the road courses for a little bit. I am looking forward to a non-super speedway or a non-road course race to calm things down a bit, and I hope you guys are too. Tune in next time to talk about the latest updates, theories, news, recaps, and more of the NASCAR Cup Series. So thank you so much again for listening to Above the Yellow Line. And until next time, my name is Taylor, and I'll see ya.